What is the creepiest thing that ever happened to you but never told anyone?
I went to New Brunswick for a week to help my mom empty out my grandfather's house after he died. I don't live near the ocean, but he lived across the street, and I took advantage by spending hours every day looking for seashells, and I had started a small collection on the front porch. On one of the days, we had an estate sale where 100+ people came throughout the day. An overly friendly older couple introduced themselves to me, saying that they were my grandfather's friends. They mentioned that they saw the shells on the porch, and the lady mentioned that she also collects shells, and I should come to her house to grab some. I awkwardly laughed and walked away. When I came back around the front of the house, they were talking to my mom's husband about how I should go with them because they live right down the street. My mother's husband immediately agreed on my behalf, and I felt weird saying no at this point, so I just went with them. Turns out their house, right down the street, was actually about 40 minutes away by car. As soon as we hopped in the car, they quickly started asking a bunch of questions like, what grade am I in? What extracurriculars do I do? Am I a party girl or a studious girl? Etc., etc. I had to eventually interrupt them to tell them that I was actually 20 years old and not in school. And somehow after that, they went from super bubbly and friendly to completely quiet for the rest of the ride. I went to their house, the lady filled a small bag with shells, and they quietly and awkwardly dropped me back off. Super weird vibes.
I could see my house from my elementary school's soccer field. One time during recess, I thought I could see my mom in her bedroom window, and I was waving at her. It didn't quite look like her, but who else could it possibly be? I thought it was strange that she was home, because both my parents were usually at work when my siblings and I were in school. When I got home from school, I told my mom I tried to wave at her during recess, but she said she got home just a few minutes before my siblings and I did. I just said, "Oh, never mind, I'm just kidding." But the more I think about it, there was some lady in my parents' bedroom window that was strangely opening and closing the curtains for several minutes.
A year or two ago, I stumbled upon a subreddit that was populated by quite a few members, but the posts were absolutely nonsense. But they commented on each other's posts as if they all understood what they were talking about. I kind of lurked for a little while, then got bored and forgot about it. A few weeks later, I was talking to someone via chat and I mentioned the subreddit to them, and out of nowhere, I started getting chat requests from the members of that subreddit. I accepted a few of the chats and they were speaking to me very aggressively with similar gibberish that filled their sub. I blocked them all and never heard from them again. I don't know what the hell it was all about, but it made my skin crawl.
When I was 14, I was walking in my town, which had no more than 100 people in it. I noticed that a former neighbor who'd moved away parked at the park. I assumed he was visiting someone and parked there. I walked home, which was like a 3-minute walk to my yard from the park, and he pulled up beside me. I was like 5 steps from my yard, and he tried to convince me to get in his car to see his nephew, who was my friend. And when I told him no, he told me he'd give me a ride all the way to my house as my yard was fairly large. But it was like 2 minutes, tops from there to my house. I kept telling him no and he kept getting angrier. He grabbed something from the passenger seat and tried to grab the door handle. At the same time, another neighbor came out to see what was going on. He drove off so fast. He kidnapped another girl a couple of months later at knife point. I didn't tell anyone because it was well known he was a creep among the girls in town. I didn't even process that he was trying to kidnap me until my grandma told me he was arrested for kidnapping a girl. Then I felt so guilty at that time that I didn't mention it to anyone.
One day, I heard my dad call my name. Weird, but not exactly unusual. He lives nearby and comes over when he needs something, though he usually knocks instead of just yelling my name. I get up and check outside, but I don't see his truck. I walk around the outside of the house but can't find him. I hear him call my name again, with some urgency, like he's getting impatient, but he is not there. I can see his house from my front yard, and I realize his truck is not there either. I grab my phone and call him, but he doesn't answer. This actually freaks me out because he is great about answering the phone. I've called him at midnight as well as 5 in the morning, and he's answered every time. He says my name again, and I don't even think about it. Grab my keys, get in the van, and take off down the highway. There's a crossroads less than a mile from the road, 2 roads crossing, 4 possible ways to go, including back the way I came. I turned down this little back road, and after 3 miles I came over this hill, and his truck was lying upside down, on the side of the road. He's alive, but out of it. Mild concussion, it turns out. His phone's still in his pocket. I let him believe it was just a weird coincidence that I felt like going for a drive that day.
Shortly after I left school, I got a job working night shifts at a cinema in the city, and I remember I was on the bus going home. The only other person on the bus was this man somewhere in his 40s, 50s, started talking to me. I was 16 at the time, and he kept asking me about what I was up to and what I had been doing during the day. I lied, saying I was a waiter working for a local restaurant, and he then asked if I had just left school, which I foolishly said yes. He then said, "You seem quite agitated. I'm only trying to be friendly." And by this point I was becoming quite paranoid, and after he started smoking on the bus, I decided to get off the bus, despite being 6 stops away from my house, and walked the rest back home.
After my husband died of bone cancer at 50, I had a day of grieving that was so severe I went to bed crying. When I tried to get up, I found to my horror I could not walk. I had to pee so bad, but I seriously could not walk. I ended up getting the trash can and peeing in it. It scared me so much. Before, I'd always thought I was quite stoic and psychosomatic stuff was baloney. I went back to sleep and woke up hours later and could walk. And of course there was pee in the trash can. Yuck. I researched it and found it's not that uncommon in grieving to suffer physically in a way that mirrors the ailments of the person that died. For the next year, I slept with crutches under the bed just in case it happened again. Interestingly, after my mom died of Alzheimer's, my father had days of being very forgetful and confused that resolved in time.
When I was 9, I traveled down to Mexico for my sister's wedding. I had incredibly blonde hair that fell past my butt. It was absolutely stunning. My brother-in-law is a native, and he, my sister, Mum, and I went out shopping. My brother-in-law had gone to another section of the store, and my mother had gotten distracted, and I think I just ran to another aisle. I did notice that 2 men were standing fairly close to me, and when I switch aisles, they did as well. They were talking to themselves. I had no idea what they were saying, so I just kept looking at all of the trinkets. My brother-in-law suddenly hurried over to me and escorted me out of the store quickly. He put me in the car, and my sister walked over to him, and I heard her ask what had happened. He said that he heard the 2 men conversing in Spanish, that they wanted to take me and sell me. For the rest of the trip, I remember every adult around me being weirdly protective. I was mad about it at the time. I had no clue what that meant, until many years later, and then I was like, damn, I was almost trafficked. My brother-in-law is a native Mexican, but he is incredibly white. Like platinum blonde hair and almost translucent Jim Gaffigan white. We all were white. I think they assumed that no one in our group could speak Spanish, and so I think they were less guarded than they would have been normally. And he overheard them.
That's actually so scary. I remember something similar happened to me when I was in Egypt with my family. We went to an all-inclusive hotel for 7 or 8 days. I was 12 at that moment, but even then I was quite considerable and could sense when things started getting kinda off. Let's start from the fact that I didn't enjoy hot weather, so I used to spend a lot of time at the bars drinking some kids' cocktails or soda drinks and just playing on my phone or reading something. And there was a barman, judging by looks, around 23-0, who acted really oddly. Firstly, everything was all right. He was just being friendly with me, joking around and all that stuff, so I thought that he was just being like that with all kids. But then it started getting obvious that I got some kind of a special treatment, because he started giving some strange compliments, looking at me all the time and acting like I'm his adult friend, not a 12-year-old girl on vacation. Then he even started asking me questions about my parents. I mean, where they are, what do they usually do, when and why I spend time alone. That's like the craziest part. Now I would just walk away and ignore him, but back then I was too polite to do that. Then, when it was like almost the end of our vacation, I went for a little walk around the hotel territory to take some pictures when I suddenly saw him. It was really weird because he was a barman, so in the evening was supposed to stay at the bar. He approached me and started trying to convince me to go somewhere with him. I already don't really remember what he was promising to show me. I'm really happy that I wasn't polite and ran away because now I understand how that could have ended. For me,
I was 21 and was walking from one work building to the other. It was maybe like a 5-mean walk. It was about 10 p.m. A silver minivan with stuffed animals lining the windshield pulled up, rolled down the window, slowly following next to me, and asked if I needed a ride. Me, being 21 and annoyed already with my job, just answered nope. He kept asking question after question, and I ignored every single one. Finally, he asked my name. I stopped walking, he stopped, and I just stared at him. Literally just stared at him for like 2 solid minutes, then took out my phone and snapped a picture of him with flash, so it purposely wasn't discreet. He drove off. A week later, the same thing happened to another female co-worker. She told him to F off and called the cops. I gave them the pic I had taken, not sure if anything ever came of it. Later, we all found out there was a string of sexual assaults happening between the buildings, so all employees were told to not walk that path anymore. Never found out if it was that guy, but the ick it gave me was indescribable.
Had a dude follow me into my apartment block. We had a slow old lift that broke a lot, but it was working that day. As it slowly ascended, I could hear hard, fast steps on the stairs. As I exited the lift in the dark, the light timed out because slow lift. I felt something grab at my feet. I ran around the corner and up the last flight. Lift didn't go up to the very top floor. I waited at the top of the last few steps. I could hear breathing that wasn't mine and the slow, deliberate crunch of a shoe slowly connecting with tile. My eyes adjusted to the dark and I could see a shadow peek and very cautiously emerge from around the wall. Once I could see the full shadowy outline, I kicked full force with my new rocks into what seemed like the head. At that point, my elderly neighbor opened her door to give out that I was making too much noise. I shoved her into her apartment, closed her door and ran to my door, woke my flatmate and told him to lock the balcony doors, as you could easily access his balcony from the roof. He went into the hall and found my broken jewelry and a little splatter of blood, but no person or anything else. I had to apologize to the neighbor. She didn't believe me, thought I was just being loud and aggressive.
When I was probably 10, my mum and I were cleaning out my closet while my younger brother, about 2-3 years old, was in the kitchen playing. We live in the country, and it was only us 3 living in the house. I heard a man say, "They let you play in here all alone, boy," coming from the direction of the kitchen. I turned to Mum and said, "Who was that?" To which she responded, "You heard that too." We ran into the kitchen, no one in sight other than my brother. All windows and doors closed and locked. When we asked who it was, he just said, "That man." Still a mystery to this day, and I will never forget that voice. We've talked about it several times, and my mom basically believes it had to be a ghost. She was very confident no one could have been around. We really did live down a long driveway in the country. She even called our neighbors, family, again in the country. I've never been able to decide if I believe ghosts or not, but given the information I have, that's the closest thing I have to a ghost story.
A friend dropped me off at my apartment one night, and where I lived, the interstate was about 3 blocks from my house. There was an awful wreck involving a semi and another car, so after she dropped me off, I thought I would walk up the street to take a closer look. As I was walking back to my apartment, I noticed a man walking behind me, fast, like he was trying to catch up to me. I sped up a bit, and then so did he. My heart was racing. I thought to just cross to the other side of the street, but instead, to see if he followed, but then thought, what if he does? I don't know where it came from, but I stopped dead in my tracks, turned around and turned right towards him. He kept walking right by me, but I stared him down the whole time.
Back in my junior year of college, I think it was about a week before school started back up. My friend was a residential advisor, RA, and he realized he forgot to make a bunch of posters that needed to go up tomorrow. It was midnight and he didn't have a car, but I did. So we go to the local Walmart, and it's exactly what you envisioned a Walmart at midnight, back in 2012-ish. Random people stalking the aisles. The ones you did spot had hoodies on like they didn't want you knowing about their late-night ice cream sandwich cravings. We get to the arts and crafts area of the store and just picking random shit out. Suddenly, a random lady pokes her head into the aisle we're in and is staring at us hard. She looked like skin and bones and wrinkles across her face. She suddenly says, "Excuse me," and I'm thinking, oh boy, and she asks about some of the products. I say, "Sorry, we don't work here, so we don't really know." And she just goes, "Oh," and keeps staring at us. At this point, we just decide what we grabbed is enough, the terrible glitter. We get to the checkout line, before the time of self-checkout, and this same lady is right behind us. I'm just going, ooh-hoo, but try to avoid eye contact. We check out and leave, and me and my bud are joking about it, saying, "Guess that's the Walmart After Dark TM experience." While we're in the parking lot, I notice this large black van with no windows parked oddly, and it's on and running. I elbow my bud again and laugh and say, "Watch out, they're going to kidnap you," and we're laughing about it. But we hop into my trusty Honda Accord, which I killed the following summer, and off we zoot along. But as I'm leaving the parking lot, I noticed the black van started following us. I shrug and think to myself, hey, sometimes people are going in similar directions. But after hitting 2 different stoplights and make a left turn, they're still following us. I'm semi-freaking out, and my buddy noticed, and I remember a trick which was to keep making left turns to see if the person behind you is actually following you. I did 3 left turns and they're still following us. At this point, I'm legitimately going, fuck this, and begin driving towards a police station on campus. However, the black van knew that we knew, and sped off to God knows who knows where. I'm just relieved it's over. My friend was convinced we were going to get mugged or much worse. We get back to the campus parking lot. We can see our dorm. There is a single light in our parking lot that's about 50 feet away from the door we're heading to. We can see hope. We're almost home. And as we cross from the pavement of the parking lot to the grass, out of bushes some random-ass white dude in a hoodie comes out, like he's Reverse Simpson. This guy looks like he had been tweaking. I could see the crazy in his eyes. He just walks up and he goes, "Hey guys, you got a phone I could use?" And instantly I say, "Oh, sorry man, I don't have my phone on me." But my friend, right as he was going to say something, his phone just has to go off right then. He just closes his eyes and lets out the loudest, but also silent, sigh I've seen in my life. Him and I are both thinking the same thing. This guy is gonna stab. Thus, if we don't get along with him. My bud reaches into his pocket and begins to hand over the phone, when suddenly red and blue sirens flash behind us. Our heads all collectively dart over, and we see a police officer get out of his car. Now at this point I don't know how to read this damn situation. Are we saved? Is a gun about to be pulled out? The officer speaks up and says, "How's everyone doing tonight?" Me and my bud just awkwardly smile and say, "Oh, we're just trying to go back into the dorm." The officer targets on the Bushman, TM, and says, "Hey, I'd like to chat with you real quick. We got a report about a robbery and it matched your description, so we just want to talk." The man pauses, then goes, "But I need to make a phone call," and he just sort of wiggles my bud's phone lightly in the air. The officer says, "Don't worry, I got a phone you can use after. Why don't you go ahead and hand that back?" I'm holding my breath. My bud is just frozen, and Bushy Boy is just standing there menacingly. Finally, he just nods and gives the phone back. We say goodnight and power walk to the damn dorm door. We get in, close the door, get away from the windows, and then lose our minds. We're laughing either out of joy or of madness. I tell Buddy I'm never driving him after midnight again. He owes me food after this.
I was 14 years old and was babysitting for one of my dad's friends. He still wasn't home by 1 a.m., and I ended up falling asleep on the couch. I had a really strange dream that I was floating above my body looking down, and the guy I was babysitting was standing over me, stroking my hair. When I woke up, the dude was home and was literally standing over me stroking my hair. The whole thing still gives me the creeps even more than 30 years later.
It's not supernatural or anything, but when I was 5 or 6 years old, my stepfather would sometimes stand next to my bed and tell me about how he would kill me. How he wanted to. He'd just stand there, looking at me, and describe what he wanted to do to me. Occasionally he'd touch my face, my neck and shoulders, and just let his imagination fly. He never acted like it had happened in the morning. My mom knew he was violent. He was violent towards both of us. But she never knew he'd do this to me. I have never told anyone ever.
My then boyfriend and I had just moved to Vegas together for his new job. We were both 21 and had never lived outside of California. Well, we were staying at an extended stay behind the strip while we looked for a place to rent. I needed headphones, so I walked down the street to the store by myself to get some. I leave the store, and on a little street that turned onto the main road I was walking on, a huge dude in a blacked-out caddy pulled up, rolled his window down, and asked if I needed a ride somewhere. I just looked at him and said, "No thanks, I'm good," and put my headphones on. I kept walking, and about a block later, I see him again. He rolls his windows down again. I see his massive watch and all his rings. I see his back seat is so dark from the tint, wearing a really nice button-up shirt. But his smile was slimy. He again asked if I needed a ride, and I just tried to be polite and said, "No, thank you, I'm just right here," and kept walking. He just said, "Whatever, girl, your loss," and drove away. I was so naive. Looking back, I know for a fact he was a pimp and he would have trafficked me or something wild like that, and I just got lucky.
One summer night, my sister, cousin and I tried to go out in the country, about half an hour from where we lived, to steal a road sign with our family's name on it. We didn't have the right tools, so we decided to drive back home and grab them. On our way back, my sister and I swear we saw a car stopped at a stop sign a few hundred meters down the road that wasn't actually there when we got to that spot. Cousin was in the back and she said she wasn't paying attention. Couldn't make out exactly what the car looked like, but we both agree it was a vehicle moving in the direction of the stop sign and then stopping. The view was obstructed by corn for a second as we got close, and then the car was nowhere to be seen. We both agree there was a strange luminous glow to the headlights too. Felt too weird. So when we got home, we went to our room instead of looking for the tools right away, and suddenly my car alarm started going off. I was right by the window and saw within a second, but there was nobody outside messing with my car. Then within literally a minute, the light bulb to our room blew out. Just too weird, so we never messed with these things again.
I was at a coworker's apartment partying and went upstairs to use the bathroom. Nobody else was upstairs, as only the bedrooms and bathroom were up there. I came out to some guy standing outside the door. He didn't let me by and said something about looking for his blunt that he left in there. I said I hadn't seen it and knew nothing about it. He insisted he had left it in there and I probably took it. I gestured to my outfit, tight clothing with no pockets, and said, "Well, then where was I hiding it?" He said, "I think Emma have to search you." I seriously thought I was about to be assaulted. I told him again I didn't have it and he needed to go ask his boys who took it. I pushed past him and went back downstairs. I probably should have told someone, but didn't want to kill the mood. He came over when I was leaving and tried to apologize, but I just looked at him and walked out without a word.
You know how when you close your eyes, you can still see a blend of color? Phosphonies, for those who don't know what I'm referring to. Well, I started focusing on them last year when trying to sleep as a way to distract myself, similar to counting sheep, but I'm just making sense of odd shapes. All goes well, but then one night while doing it out of absolutely nowhere, the colors lined up to create a surprisingly detailed face staring at me. Probably only lasted fraction of a second at most, but it just creeped me the hell out. A couple days later happens again, but is a lot less detailed. Only 2 different tones of color shaped it in a way like an old black and white photo with really harsh lighting obscuring the face. Thankfully hasn't happened since, but there was definitely a moment when it happened where I was like, nice, can't even shut my eyes without some creepy shit going on.
When I was a teenager, I was doing some sightseeing in Paris and heading back to my hostel via the metro. I was followed by 2 men who tried to engage me in conversation and took a photo of me. When I got off at the transfer station, one of the men followed me, grabbed me from behind, and started kissing me. I froze. He started leading me onto a train and I followed, gently complying. Then when the doors were about to close, I broke free, bolted out the door, and back onto the platform. Looking back, it is pretty clear to me and terrifying to me how close I was to being kidnapped, likely by human traffickers.
Anyways, I once had a co-worker that used to ask where I would hide if there was an active pew-pew person in the building, while staring me down and his pupils dilating. I would laugh and say I wouldn't tell him because then he'd take it in case of an apocalypse. It snapped him out of that trance and he would laugh and say maybe. That happened a few times. And what I would do if held gunpoint, etc., and I would have to say, I already have been, it wouldn't be new to me, and he would get disappointed and start laughing, saying how it's a joke and everyone finds that question funny.
Getting chased by a naked homeless man. I had just left a concert and I had parked my car blocks away in a paid parking lot. As I'm getting closer, that's when I spotted the naked man on the opposite sidewalk. He was full dong, really fit, and just in some sort of a maniac episode because he was mumbling nonsense but also screaming randomly. My car was just so close to him, no way to get around. I see two males walking towards me, and the naked man was already bothered by their presence of them walking on the other side of the sidewalk. I knew the chances of me being the unlucky son of a bitch of triggering a cutscene like running into an enemy in Pokemon was high. Sure enough, I feel his gaze, and I turn to look at him, and he's full sprinting towards me like an infected in a zombie game, and I'm now full sprinting towards my car. Those two males that walked past me, they saw me and did nothing. I'm now in the parking lot and hiding behind cars, just ducking till I reach mine. Like out of a horror movie, I'm trying to make myself small and not be seen. It was also dark outside. The minute I reach my car, I take off full acceleration home. Creepy part is a week later, someone on the same street was attacked and they didn't find the suspect. Saw it on the news.
I sometimes take naps in the afternoon. Just lay on my bed and have a relaxing little nap. I sometimes feel like I'm entering a state in which I'm half awake, half asleep, and I often hear breathing around me then. It's literally like someone is right behind me and breathing, or sometimes walking around in my bedroom. I always feel like I'm more awake in these moments, and at some point when it gets louder and feels like getting closer, I decide to lash out behind me in order to surprise whoever snuck up to me. Of course, no one is there, but in these moments, I can clearly hear the breathing and even think clearly. I never found anything online about this.
I lived alone. I was walking down a bare hallway with, at the time, nothing in it. No shelves, no hanging photos, just the hallway and carpet. Movement caught my eye, and I looked down and saw a quarter rolling across the carpet, which stopped, right at my feet. I'm sure there's a perfectly rational explanation for it, even if I have no idea what it was, but at the time my heart just stopped cold. On a more humorous note, one late night I was out running in the dark. I happened to be doing Zombies Run at the time and was running from zombies. You know how you get a sudden premonition there's something evil behind you, and you turn around, and there's nothing there, and then you laugh at yourself? Well, I turned around and there's a large, sinister creature lunging at me to wrestle my soul to hell. Okay. It was the world's friendliest golden retriever who thought we were having a marvelous game of chase, but it took my brain a moment to process that, during which time I nearly shat myself.
In college, some friends and I were very drunk and decided we should go get food from the local 24-hour Mexican place. It was like 3 a.m., and obviously no one on campus is alive at that time, so the campus was dead. Except for the man dressed in Anne's all-white suit. This man kept following us, although my friends were too drunk to notice and care, but I kept my eye on him. There was only one girl in our group, and I told her just in case. About halfway there, I turn a corner and wait for the dude so I can tell him to fuck off. I'm waiting there, and here he slinks, keeping in the shadows. I told him, "Dude, I've seen you following us, just get lost." He looks me dead in the eyes, corners me and says I wasn't following them, I was following you. I was so confused I thought he was hitting on me, so I said, "I'm not, And by this time my friends finally realize I'm not there, so they yell my name. The guy looked up for 1 second. I skirted by him and jumped over the railing and just ran. I didn't want to know why a grown man would be outside of a college campus at 3 a.m. on like a Thursday wearing an all-white suit. Either that or that. Time I went into an abandoned warehouse with 4 of the most muscular Jamaicans I've ever seen to buy my Xbox 360.
I was about 12 and resting on the couch. A small lamp was directly in my face. The light was nice and warm, so I looked right at the bulb. My vision was fully white, not painful at all, so I just closed my eyes and fell asleep. I woke up looking directly into the white light. However, I opened my eyes into a pure black silhouette peering over me, not standing near me, looking down. I mean, hunched over inches from my face, I saw the black shape of a head and neck connected to the body. I blinked after 3 seconds of staring at this and it disappeared.
My mom had a stack of old board games in the closet, among them a Ouija board. My younger sister and I played with it in the game room one night, and we were the last 2 people up. I sent her off to bed, boxed up the game, and put it back in the closet so there wouldn't be hell to pay with my OCD neat freak mom. I'm the early riser in the family, and as I shuffled into the kitchen the next morning, the Ouija board was set up at my place at the breakfast table with the planchette in the dead center. The game room closet was closed and the box for the game was still in the closet.
When I was 15, I met my 5th cousin's family. It was by accident. We happened to end up in the same part of GA. They are from Indiana. Everyone liked to party. We were all having a good time. My cousin's wife and daughter left to get more drinks. My 40M cousin kissed me. It was a real kiss. I got sick and ran off. Had to pretend nothing happened. This was way before cell phones. The next day, my mom came by and got me. I never went back. Every time something came up, I got sick. I never told anyone. Even now, when I think of it, I get nauseous.
At night, like 2 a.m., my fire alarm goes off. I didn't realize it had been replaced with a voice one, so a soft women's voice just goes, fire. Creepy enough, but whatever. I look and nothing. I can't find a fire. Nothing is on. No smell. Nothing. Not even steam from the shower. Go to bed 10 minutes later, fire. I get up again, no fire, nothing, just my fire alarm's lights flashing. No smoke, no steam, nothing's on. Then, and this is where I lost my mind, swear I hear, "Didn't you hear me? I said fire." Look around. And swear there's a see-through-ass old lady in the corner of my room. There's a fire. The non-existent figment of my imagination yells at me. Oh, hell no, I'm dreaming. Yeah, that's it. I go back to bed, hiding under my covers. There's a fire, I hear again. Finally, I'm just like, whatever, I'm going insane, it's fine, and I get up, look that ghost in the non-existent eyes and say, and what am I supposed to do about it? Call 00 and tell them a ghost told me there's a fire? And that's when I hear fire trucks. Dozens of them going down the block over. Oh good, they're here, my imagination figment ghost yells before going through my wall and following. The sirens. Yep, that's it, I'm done, I'm out. I take 2 anxiety meds and go to sleep. I'm not having this, nope. I heard and saw all of this. I'm hallucinating, nope. This is all in my goddamn head. I'm not addressing this at what is now 2:30 a.m. The next morning I tell my partner of the weird shit I experienced the night before. I ask them if they heard the fire alarm and they hadn't. For fun, they look up if there was a fire last night. There was a fire. 3 blocks away. An old woman died while on the phone trying to call the fire department. There was a photo. It was the damn old lady I'd saw, wrinkle for wrinkle. It was a ghost.
I was at my neighbor's party with my family, and I got in trouble, so my mom sent me to the house when I was 8. I remember looking down the long, empty, dark hallway from my room, being terrified by myself. I blinked and saw a woman sitting across from me, wearing a suit and black tie, light brown hair, with all black eyes, staring at me. I was terrified. Then it vanished as fast as it appeared.
I've actually told one person this, my SO, who was semi-involved in it. There was a stray cat hanging around our house that we fed for over a year. We tried to coax her inside, but she wouldn't come in, despite being friendly, letting us pet her, etc. One morning, my SO left the house on his way to work and found the cat lying in the yard. She had apparently been hit by a car and crawled back onto the lawn. He got her into a box and took her to the emergency vet, but there wasn't anything they could do for her but euthanize her to spare her a few more hours' pain. I started work earlier and was already gone when it happened. My SO told me about it that night. I was upset. About a week later, I was sitting out on the deck when I saw something in the yard. I looked over the railing and saw what I could swear was our cat. I mean, had I not known what had happened, in a million years it wouldn't have crossed my mind that this wasn't her. I ran down to the yard, and she saw me and backed off a little, which our cat normally would not have done, so I stopped. But I could see her clearly and again could swear it was her. I spoke to her the way I always had, and she watched me but didn't come closer. Then she suddenly meowed once, turned and trotted off. I started following her, but she ran faster, and I thought I was scaring her and stopped. She ran around the side of the house. I didn't see her when I looked around the corner, and I never saw her again. I asked my SO 1,000 times if he was sure that the cat he found was our girl, and he swears he knows it was. I suppose it's possible that there was another cat who looked just like her that happened to wander into the yard that afternoon. But I'd like to think it was our girl coming by one last time to say goodbye.
When I was about 27, I volunteered at a small community theater. Back then, it was my nature to be flirty. I just wanted people to like me. The show was a comedy of 2 men, both much older than me. Both were creepy around me. In rehearsal, one made a joke about my ass, the production staff, and everyone laughed. I remember my blood running cold because he looked me right in the face as he said it, and his eyes were intense. Back then, Women got hyper-blamed for men's actions against us, so I made a neutral clapback and walked away. To this day, I've never been that scared. I probably should have quit, but I was desperate for a social life post-college.
17 or 18 years ago, I was living in New York City and going to college there. While waiting for some friends at a coffee shop, a man saw me sketching and asked if I was an artist. We got talking and he said he was working on a show for a gallery nearby and needed an assistant to help in his studio. We exchanged numbers and later had a couple of meetings to go over the work, what he needed help with, etc. A few weeks later, he gives me the address for his studio and says when he'll be there for us to get to work. When I got there, it was a big apartment complex, but it didn't seem like many people lived in the building. I was like 15 minutes early, but I went in, up the stairs, found the apartment, and the door was cracked open. I knocked a few times, then looked in. The apartment was completely empty, except for a group of a few candles lit in the center of the room on the floor and some canvases leaning against the wall with white fabric draped over them. I walked in to see if he was there, but nobody was inside. All of the rooms were empty, except for a hammer leaning against the wall behind the one door. I grabbed my bag and got out of there. Instead of going home, I tried finding the gallery he claimed he was represented by, but the address was a restaurant or something, definitely not a white-walled gallery like he had claimed. The next day, he called me asking why I didn't show up the night before, and told me I would now need to pay for the very expensive materials he claimed he needed to make the art with. I told him I knew the gallery didn't exist and that we wouldn't be working together. He became furious and started screaming some, "If you don't show up tonight at 8, you'll never work in this town again" type shit, and I just hung up on him. He called me every Thursday at the same time for like 6 or 7 weeks after, but I never picked up, and eventually he stopped.
I was dating a guy and his friend was over. Friend's phone had died while he was recording himself rapping and asked to use my phone. I was drawing and not using it, so I didn't see it being an issue. After a while, I realized he wasn't singing anymore and asked for my phone back. When I unlocked the screen, it was on an explicit picture I had taken for BF and had been edited to have the words, "You should show me in person." I freaked and immediately got up and locked myself in my room. I started panicking and bawling and messaged my BF to come to the room. When he did, I showed him the picture and told him I wanted said friend the hell out of my house. He kept trying to calm me down and acted like it was no big deal. But after me screaming for about 10 minutes, he left to take friend home. I was so ashamed of the photo to begin with, I didn't tell anyone. I have a feeling BF and friend were trying to start something I was in no way comfortable doing. I didn't allow his friend anywhere near me again and broke up with the BF shortly after, but it has continued to haunt me mentally.
Moved into an older bungalow with my family, not in the middle of the woods or anything, but in a small neighborhood. It felt super off from day one. Shadows moving in the corner of my eye, weird whispers outside in the middle of the night, random objects ending up wet when left unattended. The thing is, no one else in my family felt or experienced any of these things. Now 3 people living in a large bungalow made it feel super lonely, and the weird, eerie experiences were driving me insane. The breaking point was when one night, I again heard weird noises in the main hall and the circuit breaker tripped. Left the house for a nearby motel the very same night. We rented an apartment in a different part of town soon after, and nothing of the sort ever happened again.
Not the creepiest, but something I've never had the opportunity to talk about that seems more and more strange as I get older. When I was a teen, I used to ride a bus to go visit my dad because neither of my parents drove. The ride was from a Northern California town to San Francisco, about 2-hour ride depending on traffic, where I would meet up with my dad and hop on a train to San Jose. Well, I'm on the bus one day and it's pretty packed, so unfortunately a stranger had to sit beside me. He was a man in his late 40s, early 50s. I'm from a small town and I've been raised to smile at everyone I encounter, and I have a warm smile. So I assume I looked super friendly to this dude. He began talking to me, telling me that he was on his way home to his wife. He talked about how he loved when she cooked him dinner, and that sometimes he brought people he met home to have dinner with them, and she loved it. It was her favorite thing. He talked about this in a circle over and over for the 45 minutes that he sat next to me. The bus driver eventually says loudly, "You, come here right now, sit in this seat next to me." He then proceeds to scold me for talking to people and asks me how old I am. I tell him, and he gets more enraged and tells me he will kick me off the bus if I keep talking to people. I sat awkwardly right there in that seat in silence for the remainder of the ride. I didn't see where the man got off. I remember feeling so confused about everything. Why was that man so talkative? How could his wife be so excited for him to bring home random strangers from his bus rides, not to mention a 14-year-old girl? Why was the bus driver so mean? Did he not care what happened to me if he dropped me in the middle of nowhere in the dark? As an adult, I now have way more sinister questions about that encounter.
I was 17 or 18 and worked at a beer bar. Went in on my day off to grab my check and have a beer. Ended up having 1 or 2 beers, was drinking heavily at the time, so this wouldn't do much for me usually, with an older lawyer guy who had introduced himself to me. I can't remember if I left my drink unattended or not, but next thing I know I'm beyond fucked up. Ended up basically stumbling home. Slept for literally 36 hours and woke up to piles of puke everywhere in my home. I think he attempted to date rape me, but I got away. I can't help but feel like I was close to a deadly overdose on whatever drug he used.
In 2018, my family called the maintenance worker to our house to inspect a leaking washing machine. I was 12 at that time, and I was naive when it came to fully trusting everyone we let into our house. The maintenance man was doing a good job. Throughout, found the problem, and fixed it promptly without complicating anything. I went back to the living room to finish my homework, only to realize I left a textbook in my bedroom. It was then I heard the noise of cabinets opening and closing from my bedroom, and it was already after he was paid for his work. When I opened my bedroom door, I caught the man sniffing my tights. I did not know what to do as I was in shock and disgust, but calmly told him to leave. The guy was so embarrassed he left behind his toolbox. My mom was home at the time and in the kitchen preparing dinner, and I did not want to tell on him knowing she will freak out. The guy got his tools back, which my parents believed to this day was a result of him being in a hurry.
About 10 years ago at the age of 22, 23, when I got my own store after being a trainee for 2 years, I worked a lot, commonly 55, 70 hours a week for about 2 months. I always was very exhausted at the end of every day and especially at the end of the week. One night I had a very real dream about some predator creature which hunted me. We fought, and the moment it got very close to stomach, I suddenly woke up. I laid for a few minutes and got up to get myself ready. After washing my face, I watched in the mirror and had the worst jump scare in my life. Across half of my belly, there was a red print of a hand, finger's arm. While brushing my teeth, I took a closer look at it and tried to lay my arm the same position like the print was. After about 10 minutes, I gave up. There was no way positioning my arm without dislocating. Also, I remember waking up on the back. Probably once or twice a year, I wake up laying face down on one of my arms, getting up with a print on my belly plus chest. Never could figure out how it was possible the very first time it happened.
I've experienced plenty of creepy things since I was a young girl, but there's 2 that stick with me the most. The first, I've never told my mom, and she has no idea it happened, but I have told friends and experienced this with a friend. There's a man that lives at the bottom of my street with his wife, or used to. I've not actually seen them in a long time, and they used to talk to us and other kids quite a bit. I always got a really weird vibe from him, but I was never sure why. Anyway, one day my friend tells me that him and his wife, who also gave me weird vibes, had invited her to hang out at his house. I tried to convince her not to go, but she was having absolutely none of it. So I decided that I couldn't let her go alone and I'd go with her. After about 10 minutes, the wife offered us a drink. I declined, but she kept insisting, and then went to the kitchen. At this moment, the man went upstairs. I was feeling like this wasn't right and we shouldn't be here. So I quietly begged my friend for us to leave. I think that thankfully she could tell how scared I was, and we just got up and left. For so long, I thought maybe I was overreacting and they were just 2 friendly older people. But when I got a bit older, my mom told me about some of the disgusting things he'd said and done to other young women, including another member of my family. I don't want to go into details about this because it's not my story to tell, and my mom only told me for my safety and my friends, but I still never told her about this day. The second, for me, this was a lot worse than the experience above, and is actually more than just a creepy experience. I've never ever told anyone about it, and the memory has only recently resurfaced after it happened over 10 years ago, after burying a lot of things from my teenage years. I was 14 years old and I had quite a big and diverse group of friends, ranging from others my age up to probably 20 years old. A lot of these people are lovely people to this day, if not just troubled and struggling to navigate the world like I was. But not everyone was lovely. And my life involved a lot of alcohol and drugs, a lot of house parties, which included the bad and the good people. But not everyone knew that these bad people were bad, what they were doing behind closed doors, or what they were capable of. One small house party, I went with a few of my older friends. I was the youngest. And the only other girl there was, I think, either 16 or 17, with the lads ranging from 17, 18. Anyway, me and the girl decided we were tired, so we went to smoke a spliff in the host's bed and chat until we fell asleep. Throughout the entire night, I never felt uncomfortable or unsafe, and the guy that ruined this night had never given me creepy vibes, even though he was a bit odd at times. But at some point in the night, I woke up and he had gotten into bed in between us and he was touching me. The other lass was still asleep, but I think he could tell I'd woken up because he started whispering dirty things in my ear, calling me degrading names. I didn't move or say anything back, though. I just stayed still, staring at the wall in front of me.
I would see people and different figures in my room the few seconds after waking up. It could have been just the days after waking up, but it happened several times, and it scared the piss out of me every time. The first time was the scariest and most intense. I woke up facing my nightstand and I saw a woman leaning over my nightstand, reaching over to grab something. She noticed I was looking at her and she disappeared. She had a look of shock like, oops, he saw me. It gives me chills just writing this and remembering. She was not ugly or scary. She seemed to be in her 20s or early 30s, but I did not recognize her. And it happened so fast I just woke up, noticed. Her and she disappeared. I had to sit up and turn on the lights to calm down before going back to sleep. Other times I would see figures in my closet, and I would stare in horror as the figures would turn into the clothes hanging in my closet. And as I woke up, I would realize I was just staring at my open closet. That's why I think it was just the blur of waking up. But one time I saw a man climb into my closet and disappear into it. Sometimes it would be very bright, trippy lights coming out of my closet. It was never the same thing twice, and I can't remember how many times it happened, but I'm glad it hasn't happened in a while.